So I was going to drive down to Bristol, stand in front of a group of people, talk about stress with my new stoma, with a pump on my side, pumping chemotherapy into my body. Meanwhile, I have surgery to give me a stoma. That was really important because if the lump carried on growing, it could have perforated my bowel, and a perforated bowel is actually more serious than the cancer condition I was suffering at that time. So therefore, to make sure that wasn't going to be a problem, they diverted my bowel outside my body, and I now have a stoma. And then I had started chemotherapy about 4 weeks later, and I've got various different appointments, meetings, work commitments booked into my diary, and I'm not unbooking them because I want to see how things go. And there's this meeting coming up with the CIPD where I was going to talk about stress, and my wife said, "You're not going to do that, are you?" It was the day after I started chemotherapy, and she says, "You're not going to do that, are you?" I said, "Well, yes, I am." And so there's a nothing's going to stop me. There's a partly because my wife said you're not going to, and I go, well, therefore, yes, I am. And there's a partly me just wanting to show that you can do this stuff if you want to. And the particular chemotherapy I was on was one where I had what's called a PICC line. So that's a permanently inserted line or semi-permanently inserted line into my vein that they just plug me into to deliver the drugs. And the reason I had to have that is that the drugs, you don't just get them in a few hours in hospital. They connect a bottle pump to you. And that's for 48 hours. I'm carrying that around with me. I'm sleeping with it. And it's continuing to pump chemotherapy into my body for 48 hours. So I was going to drive down to Bristol, stand in front of a group of people, talk about stress with my new stoma, with a pump on my side, pumping chemotherapy into my body. And my wife's compromise on this was, well, you can't drive yourself because you're not meant to drive on chemotherapy. And I go, okay. One of my best friends said, I'll drive you down. I bet she thought he was really helpful. And she said, fine, okay, do it. And that's what happened. I was driven down to Bristol. I stood in front of a group of people, and it gave me an opportunity to practice what then became my script to hundreds of people over the last few years, where I've stood in front of groups or I've stood in front of meetings, and I've introduced myself. And the first thing I do is I introduce my stoma.
It has a name.
It has a name, yeah. And I do it because if you know anyone who's got a stoma, they have little or no control over it. So I didn't mention this to you earlier, Gary, but at any moment during our recording, this stoma could join in the conversation. And it will do that through a fairly loud, rippling, farty noise. So what I say to people is that if that happens, feel free to laugh out loud, giggle along, because I will be doing the same.